Okay, well, now after a little bit of a delay, oh my gosh, it's like I forgot everything I learned last time. After a little bit of delay, I'm on the air. Note to self, paste new streaming key in before trying to stream with the old key. Now I know. So that's a song that I just finished at the end of last year, and it's part of an 11-song compilation. I'll talk about that in a bit, but first, to recap, for the last month, it's been cold as hell here in Connecticut. It's been icy. Oh my gosh. I had to help the mailman up the driveway. Even though it's just a slight hill here, it was a solid sheet of ice. All of last year, we had feet of snow. I don't know how we avoided this. This year, we had more freezing rain and weird weather cycles that gave us a lot of rain, soaking the ground, and then a hard freeze right after that. So all my trails through the woods here, where you just saw a lot of the woods in that video, were very difficult to get through. So luckily we have these things we strap on the bottom of our boots. They're basically like chains, tire chains for your boots. And I've had them for a couple years now and never needed them till this year. But even just walking down the driveway to get the mail, I tried to go down today without them and slipped a few times. It didn't fall, but still, it's something that this Florida boy doesn't have a whole lot of experience with, except for my years out west, where I was in the land of the snow and not so much the ice. So let's dive in here to this track that you just heard. You heard the final version, the mastered version. This should be the version without any mastering on it, because this would have been the one I exported last. Let's look. Oh, look, SeligAudio products all over the place. Yeah, mastering is bypassed here, so we were exporting this. I still leave the master compressor on. We'll play a little bit of this so you can hear what it sounds like the way I sent it in to be mastered. Probably not a whole lot different. Wait for the drums to come in so we can hear what's going on. Yeah, a little bit smaller sounding. This is my mastering. Ouch. I'll just call that brute force mastering. It's what I put on everything to just get a feel for what's going to happen when I send it out to the real guy. In this case, this was mastered by Bob Olson, famously of Motown in his early years. And then he moved to the Bay Area and worked on some music that I worked on through the Hearts of Space label. And then moved to Nashville, where I met him around 20 years ago. And he's been my go-to guy ever since. And it's great to have him. It just feels like I can trust the project. It's like giving your child over to somebody. I can trust him. He'll do a good job. And he always has fun and good feedback. And so the basic setup here was 10 or 11 drum tracks here. Let's look at it in the mixer view. The orange tracks are drums. The sub on the far left is the infuser sub, which actually is the bass on this song. There's no other bass. Let me just play you a little bit of what that sounds like. That's it. Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like it should be louder. There might be. Did I put another instrument in there? Yes. That is a water bottle, plastic water bottle hit with a marimba mallet. So those two together are the bass. Okay. And the drums are all tracked live here in the studio. And I'm switching the room mics in and out. I'm not switching them out, I'm muting in the timeline. Their room mics are off for a little darker sound. So what happens is I just go in and mute the tracks out. All these lines here, that's my crappy playing and me lining things up. There's no quantize in Reason for multi-track drums, so this is all just waiting for something to bother me and sliding it a little closer. I never try to put things on the grid for this type of project, at least, but I did move things around and mute out the overheads when I needed to change the size of the drums, let them get narrower. The basic 2 mics on the kick, 2 mics on the snare, tom mics overhead, 2 414s, spaced pair about 3 feet apart. It's right behind me, so I had to look and make sure. And then the room mics are the Royer 121s, the original phantom-powered ribbon mics, a pair of those in the Bloomlian pattern, which is XY, but for figure 8 mics. So they're crossed in an X, basically one aimed that way and the other aimed that way, but their back pattern picks up as well. It's just a very nice sound. Here's what that sounds like alone. It's compressed a little bit. A little bit, yeah. And that's it, unceremoniously interrupted. Then there's this great little Chinese ribbon mic. I'm not using a whole lot of it, but it's just mono out in front of the drum kit, about 3 feet high, 4 feet out. My partner, she worked in China for about 10 years, lived and worked in China and Taiwan after that, and met some people in manufacturing and brought a bunch of great Chinese mics back, and this was the sweetest ribbon I've heard, big fat ribbon. That doesn't really do it justice, but it's one of my favorite go-to mics. I have no idea. If it breaks, it's gone. I don't know anything about where it came from. It doesn't have any writing on it in any language, so it's pretty much, and she's not even sure if the people that she knew even work at the same place anymore. Let's talk about, there's a bunch of automation stuff here that I'm not sure. Okay, these are filter sweeps. I'm using the coloring EQ here to do some filter. Let's find it on the... That's a great example of automating the slope to go from something with a peak all the way down to something that's just 6 dB per octave, which has no resonance, and then to just flat and dialing it out so it just disappears even before the frequency gets down low enough to otherwise take us out. That in context sounds like this. You can hear it there. Then it all kicks in here. Okay, let's look at the percussion. Yeah, there's more percussion tracks than there are drum tracks. You can see I'm turning on some reverbs for certain hits. Sloppy playing there. The Doombeck, that sound, it's one of my secret weapons. It used to be the AMS reverb, now it's the Synapse Fat Space. That's without it. So it's a very short little exploding gated room kind of sound. Some delays going on there. And oh, let's go back here. And that's giving it the, I don't know, I first heard it on some 80s Dead Can Dance records with that kind of percussion, and I listened, finally figured out, oh, they're using a really short, bright, aggressive room that just gives some length. Percussion, a lot of percussion can be very transient based and not a lot of sustain to it naturally. And that's one way that you can add a little sustain, so you can bring it up in the mix without having to turn it up in the mix. Lots of panning too going on. Let's see, the dancer bells, goat hoofs, tambourine, shaker. Oh. I could show you these instruments, but you get the idea. Boring tambourine. So that's all of that. Then on the flute, let's look at the signal path for that. There we go. Very aggressive, low roll off. Now the first thing you'll notice is humongous reverb, of course. Cinematic Rooms is my new favorite algorithmic reverb. This one is basically just a slightly modified ancient domo. Space is big, just the biggest space I could find that didn't overpower things, so it's not super heavy. It's not super big and heavy, but it does fill the space nicely and give a lot of length to the flute so that it carries the lead. I'm behind reading my chat feed, so if I'm ignoring anybody, I apologize. I keep hitting tab thinking it's going to make this go away, but it doesn't. Let me just do, is the flute real or synth? All of this is real. Here's the story. The flute player is a friend of mine I've known since the early 80s. We've been roommates, we've been bandmates, we've been just buddies over the years, and we have done projects on and off. And he started playing these native flutes and different exotic flutes from around the world. And one show in particular, he had some tribal drum loops and with a slightly funky beat to it going. And I thought, that's what I really want to hear him do with the flutes. And then he never did it again. So I kind of tucked it away and said, one day I want to do that with him when I figure out what that means. So once I got set up here in the new space, got my drums back, I thought, let's just put some drums down for him, and ended up with 9 tracks. And I just basically played a groove that I liked. It was more of a matter of just indulge me. I'm just going to play something I'm comfortable with, something I like playing. And I'm going to do fills, and I'm going to kind of structure a song. Then I added all the percussion for the most part in each track. And then I had him come up for a week and camp out here, bought all his toys, his Moogs and Oberheim synth and a few other things he had, some guitars, some other toys, and basically just had him hear the track and play something. Picked a flute, sometimes 2. There would be a high one in the breakdowns and an octave up, and then a regular one for the main part, or vice versa. And I didn't do a lot of editing on stuff because he was getting it. We've known each other for long enough, I guess, that although we've never done a project where I was playing drums and he was playing flute, it was very easy to just knock out everything we needed. We came up one day, his subharmonicon Moog, is that how you pronounce it? Subharmonicon? Subharmonium? Well, whatever. It was, he powered up and it started playing this interesting thing that became one of the songs. So I guess I had about 8 or 9 ready for him, and then we did a couple more while he was here. And so all of this is live. On one song, I think I use radical keys for a Rhodes sound. On one song, I play a Rex loop that I created from this kit. And on one song, I got some factory, not Reason Factory, they were just concert toms, like a tribal thing that was something like I would have played anyway, and I just put it in as a placeholder, and it never grew from there. So everything's played. Occasionally the percussion, let's look at it and see. Occasionally the percussion is looped, these shakers are looped, and always in odd numbers, like 17 bars or 14 or 15 bars. 14's not an odd number unless it's double 7, I guess. And built it little by little. After he left, he gave me such a strong foundation. Let me see, on his flute, you can see there's 3 or 4 edits, but mostly big chunks. And like, for example, the intro wasn't played there, it was played somewhere else, and I put it into the intro because it was a better intro than what he had originally played, I think. I don't even remember. It's one of those moving fast, next, and we just knocked it all out. I thought it was a good example of ways to use Reason that are not the normal ways, where it still functions perfectly fine. And this is Reason 12, latest version, by the way, running fine. I think a lot of the people that are having problems are on the Windows platform, so maybe that's why I've not had as many problems as I hear of others having. Let me catch up here. Been pretty cold here in Finland as well. Yes, I was in Finland in 2017 for the heat wave. I was expecting something very cold, and I went there and it was very hot. And I also went to Stockholm and met some of the propeller heads, and equally hot there. Everybody was just shocked. In fact, there was a famous picture of the reindeer at the beach swimming with the bathers. It was so hot. I thought that was funny for Finland anyway. Warm in the Netherlands? Well, warm today. Here it's 45 right now, which is what? Celsius? I don't know. 10, 9, 8, somewhere around there. But we were down at 0, which is minus 17 or so Celsius many days last month. So I'm happy for this. Oh, the stream title card is covering part of the mixer. So is my big face too. I don't see that until I look over at the broadcast side, so I can switch that off. I spent so much time on it though. I hate to lose it. Okay. Oh, thank you for the solid-looking senior comment. Heki Roots, you're from Finland, I know. I should have, I went over there when I did to go play some music with some friends, and I didn't think to reach out to any Reason people, so I apologize for that, because I actually did a show in a little basement venue in Helsinki before we went up to Nurms for the actual event we were there for. So let's see what else I can cover here, if anything. Let me think. I'm seeing things that I don't remember. This was the first song of the project, so this is probably the one I haven't come back to for a while, of all of them. Oh, I was going to show you the radical EQ on the flute. I'm cutting out so much bottom end. This is one of those things that you don't want to look at, if that makes sense. That doesn't look right to me. But even looking at it now, I'm looking at it and saying, are you sure you really want to cut that much? But when you do it by ear, that's what it comes out looking like. That's the only thing done. The microphone was one of my favorites that I've used since the 90s. It's a gold Lawson L47, 47 clone tube mic. It's actually plated in gold. I asked Gene Lawson, who made it, why it was gold, thinking it was some sort of scientific answer, and he says, to make the singers feel special. And I thought, now that's my kind of designer there. Gold because it makes a better sound or conducts something, or I don't know. I was expecting anything but that, but I appreciate that, because putting it up on a singer who's never seen it before, they usually are pretty impressed with it and feel pretty special. So it just works for a lot of things. It's what I used for all the flute on this. Into the LA 610, which is a LA 2A compression. And I don't think I did any EQ. It's got a bass and treble EQ. I don't think I did any EQ, and certainly didn't drive it very hard. Let's see if we can tell anything from listening to it. Oh, there is shimmer, some sort of, oh, it's the neutron verb. This is the, doing the, oh gosh, I'm looking at this and trying to remember. This is Gustav's neutron particle emitter that I made a shimmer reverb out of when he first put it out, and I still, I go to it even before his own shimmer reverb, which I used on a few other tracks here, but this one is the one that just has, maybe because I made it, I like it, who knows, but it's the one that just, for these types of things, just works so well. So we've got a delay, the fat space, which is the super short percussion booster, and then the big long, what was that preset called again? Ancient Domo, the big one. Now the neutron shimmer verb is a little bit, it's got some length to it too, filling up some of the space. But otherwise, uh-oh, getting some interesting sounds here. That's coming from over here. Nope, I don't know where that's coming from. Hang on while I do some troubleshooting. Huh, it's not going away when I mute my audio. Internet. So while we wait and see if this fixes itself or if I'm going to have to do some troubleshooting, we're going to go on now, unless anybody has some questions about this piece. I'll use this as an opportunity to show you a little bit of the mastering. The simple mastering chain is usually just ozone elements, not even the full version. I built a combinator. This is not the latest version because this was built before Combinator 2. Boy, that's annoying. It's not coming from me, so I don't know what to say. This basically just does a louder and wider. Wider, louder. That's it. And this is the first stereo imager I've ever found that I'm happy to use. Normally I stay far away from them. I've never liked what they've done. And I reluctantly gave this a shot and thought, oh, well, now somebody's getting it right. I know there's a few others out there that are useful as well, but this one is the one that I have, and so it's the one that I'm using, and I'm very happy with it. So it's, if we were to kick it on, it's set to 50% wide, and usually what I'm going for in the master is, and I'll turn down so I can talk and play this at the same time. Here, let me skip forward a little bit. So what I'm shooting for is the peaks to hit at, oh, I've got this on, hang on. Gotta find my favorite button. Solo's off. So I'm looking to keep the VU around -12 when the peaks are up at 0 or -1. I think the headroom is actually 0.5. So if I were to move the headroom to the ceiling to 0.4, you'll see we'll go up, we should go up right here to, yep, there we go, up to 0, but still not going to go over. And that's because of how these meters read, not anything else. Everything below half of a dB goes down to the next meter. Wow, that's very annoying noise. So I still don't know what could be causing that. Let me do a few more rounds here and see if there's anything I can find that's obvious. Okay, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not me, but I've got a master knob there that when I turn it down it should make everything go away, so when I turn it down everything doesn't go away. I would use this opportunity to show you some basic troubleshooting techniques, but I've just gone through them all because the setup here isn't that complicated, so I'm not sure. I don't know troubleshooting as well with the YouTube streaming world, so I'm not sure what to say there. Anyway, that's usually all I do for mastering of my own in-house quick mastering. And I am using, because I learned how to mix this way, I'm using the master compressor on the SSL. You can see it's not doing a whole heck of a lot. I always use a slower attack and faster release and low ratio, and no more than 4 dB of gain reduction, and usually somewhere between 2 and 3. This is low for me, but on a project like this that's not as electronic based, I usually err on the side of less. You can see the main thing kicking it is the flute. If anything, the result of that, the intended result of that, is that when the flute comes in, the lead in this case, the voice could be the lead in another project, the compressor kicks in harder, which pushes the track out of the way by a few dB. So the flute comes in, kicks in the compression more, puts the flute where I want it, but pushes everything else down a little bit out of the way. That's kind of the glue effect, and that's why I run it usually very subtly with low ratio and slow attack, and even the release is 100 milliseconds, so it's not super fast. And just once I hear it, I'm usually backing off of it. So let me check in with the chat. Speaking of things you've made, how's the new tape combinator coming along? I've got distracted, I'm sorry to say. I have dropped the ball on that. It's still coming along, but it's slow to come along. So let's go to another song here. And while I do that, I'm going to talk by request about bass guitar. Somebody mentioned compression also in the Reason Talk thread. I really wish I could figure out why this noise was happening. At least it's not super loud. I'm hearing it. Maybe it's not going out. Maybe it's just something in my system here that's not going out. So you're probably wondering what the heck I'm talking about and why I'm flipping out over here. I don't have a way to listen back to the feed, the stream, so let's jump in and let's hope that it's clean going out. Oh, nope, I guess not. You can hear it too. What is it? It's really weird because it's not, if I mute all my audio, okay. I could probably stop the stream and restart it in a classic have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in troubleshooting approach, but we'll just blast some rock and roll on top of it. This is a song I played last time, giving some infuser examples. I'm just going to briefly show what I did on bass guitar because somebody was asking about the bass guitar. Now, the bass player for this track was a young kid that wasn't as experienced as I was used to, so I had to really work with the bass part a lot, and they were doing some kind of King Crimson-esque progressive rock approach, and it required a lot more technique than he was able to deliver. So it kind of is muddy, but this is what I ended up doing to it. Turn it up, so. Okay, you can hear it. That's the original. You can hear how it's uneven playing, uneven tone. Sometimes you hear that brighter sound, sometimes you don't hear. I think a lot of this comes from infuser. Yeah. So this is just a classic mid-range. I don't know how to spell that. That's all it's doing. That is in there primarily to make this bass guitar have a chance to compete with the electric crunchy guitars going on in the rest of the song. Without this, it's a very dark sound. It sounds okay on big speakers, but it just completely gets lost on little speakers. So this is doing a couple things, but the main thing it's doing is bringing the bass out on a smaller system so that we can still hear the root, the bottom. And the leveler, let's see how much that's actually doing. Okay, the main thing is going to be level consistency. You can actually hear, and let me turn this back on. That just brings it all up to the same level. Now, the target is set at -12. I should say all of these are audio tracks. It was tracked in Pro Tools at the studio back in Utah when I was living there. And my approach with audio tracks is to bring them all into Reason, normalize them, and then set the gain to -12. So you see up here, if I click on a clip and I look at the level, it's at -12. And that satisfies my gain staging technique of using a consistent peak level of -12 dB across the board. It means that the faders don't have to really go down super far. The master fader doesn't have to move at all. Basically, the things I want loud, like the vocal, are up at 0. And the bass, I think, is up at 0. No, it's at -3 at this point. And the drums are pulled down a little bit, but some of them are up at 0 still. And it just leaves the headroom that gives you the mix levels that you're looking for. If I were to, let's see if I get lucky here, or if I get exposed. What I should be seeing, let me turn it down here so we can, oh, we don't want the mastering on at this point. Oh, here's my updated mastering template. Same innards, except for I have an infuser here. So I want to peak between -6 and -3 on my mix when I don't have any mastering. So the raw mix is doing exactly that. There's -6, there's -5. So that's where my mix is. And now we get to the bridge. So hang on, let me go back a little bit. Oh, I don't even have that on. Same thing though, it's going to be between -6 and -3. And the idea is, if I bypass my mastering, I want to be able to have my mix be the pre-master mix to be hitting around -6 to -3. That's a standard, but I only do it because it's a surefire way to not clip the mix. That's about how much I have to think -3 or -6 dB to not clip the mix. I know a lot of people use all these techniques, like they'll boost the mix by 6 dB if they want 6 dB headroom and then bring it back. That's an extra step. I just get it right from the start. I like to anyway. I like to think I do. I do most of the time using this technique of peak levels -12 on all the individual tracks. That means the buses, the submixes, are going to be higher than that. They're going to be around -9 range, and then the whole mix is going to be around -6 to -3 range. And it's not a hard and fast rule, but what that does when all the peak levels are the same, it means I can set things that require a threshold, like the leveler on the bass. I can set it at -12 and I know that it's going to bring everything up to the same level. I already know, because of what I just told you, that the bass is going to peak at -12 at the loudest part, no matter what it does anywhere else. So I'm setting my target to -12 to bring everything up to that. And it's only 50% blend, so it's only bringing it halfway up to that. It's not hard leveling. I'd never used that term before, but that's the idea, is to not squash all the life out of it, but to squash only a little bit of life out of it. Okay, why use the leveler instead of a traditional compressor for bass? Because I'm trying to get it level. I'm literally trying to hit it all up to a certain a level. Compressor works as well for me, but once I started using the leveler, I found that it was easier to get a reliable result, meaning that it's never going to go over -12. I don't have to set a amount of compression and then make up. If I change my compression setting, the peak level doesn't change. I can increase the amount of compression to 100% wet. Peak level is still not going to go anywhere. I can make the curve amount anything I want and the recovery time anything I want, and it's not going to go over -12. So it's just more of a convenience, a different way of thinking, of kind of the opposite way of thinking. It's fewer knobs and fewer settings, and like I said, it's really most helpful when you're making an adjustment. So with a compressor, if I needed it more compressed, I would have to increase the compression, lower the threshold or whatever the compressor requires, and then adjust the makeup gain. So that's 2 steps, and then you're trying to get it back to where it is. In this case, the peaks are already where they're supposed to be. If the loudest parts of the bass are all right, and I'm losing some of the soft parts, I just increase the blend, because that's going to be how much it's bringing things up to the same level. At 100% wet, it should be maxed out, and I don't find it's useful at that level except for effects. Even though it's not distorting the signal or hurting it, it's just not what people normally do. Natural instruments, that is, or our vocals, for example, don't normally sing it at every single level the same. I'm rambling because I'm out of ideas on, but I feel like there's still something I wanted to say and I can't remember it now. So I'll just move on and see the general. Somebody asked a question on the Reason Talk thread about compression, individual and bus, and when to use it. This is an example. Like I showed you, the bass is just not playing every note evenly due to lack of experience. Other reasons, stick on bass for a minute. If I was using an electric bass with more of a ballad, a slower pace song, I'd probably use something like an LA2A approach, where I want to level the bass, but I also want to increase the sustain on the bass. So you don't want the bass to die away as quick. And we can do that with the leveler as well, but the leveler is a targeted compressor, so it's working on a middle of the signal. Once the bass decays past a certain point, it'll let go of it and let it go. Whereas a compressor is always going to be in effect, and there's upsides and downsides to that. In the case of the downside is if you add 6 dB of compression and then bring up 6 dB of makeup gain, you've got 6 dB more noise when there's nothing playing. With the leveler, you can have 6 dB increased across a range, and then the bottom level, where the noise is, the noise floor is not increased. So those are some of the differences. But again, the leveler, if something is a long decay, it'll eventually run out of room and let it go back to its original level. So it'll hold it for a while and then it'll let it go. If that amount of time that it's holding it is long enough, then it's fine, it works fine. But if not, then a regular old-fashioned compressor is going to be your friend there. For drums, a lot of times I'm adding compression to add some pop attack. So my go-to for that is the SSL. I think if you were to look across this part of the mixer here with the compressors, you'll see that they are all high ratio, fast release, and then medium threshold. If you watch them in action, you'll see that they're all going to hit about one LED at a time. Oh, we ran out of drums. We got to the breakdown. Solo this. This song, by the way, right now has way too much cymbal splash going on. I noticed that till I listened back to the playback from the last live stream. That's the first thing I would address. It's probably either to do with the fact that I'm putting an infuser on the drum bus and or I'm putting it on the master as well up here. So it probably just, even though this one's way low, it's minus 12 dB on the high end, it's still cumulative effect is that it's just a lot of happening with the cymbals. And I would probably just be bypassing stuff at that point. Maybe even the drum bus. Maybe not the low end, but then again, it could just be the mix. I could have the overheads up too hot and the room too hot. Let's talk about the compression on the kick and snare though. You can hear how hard the gating is. Okay, let me bypass and see if you can tell. Not really. So what we are doing is we're not using peak mode. Actually, one of these is, oh, this is the special. That's the amp, giving it the honk. And so it's a slow attack, and it's RMS sensing, so that's even slower. And so it's classic slow attack, fast release, except for this one is a fast attack, fast release, because it's trying to grab the whole thing and squash it into a tight little package. So basically, compression is either going to be doing one of those two things. We're either going to be taking it, squashing it down, dynamic range, or kind of pushing up the attack in the case of the slow attack, fast release, high ratio setting to get the little, what I call the pop. The SSL is really good at that. I hardly ever use these compressors for anything other than that. I've got it on piano here. I've got it on the guitar bus. Oh, it's actually doing the same high ratio, fast release on the guitars as it is on the drums. That's probably just to give the junk, 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 junk some attack. And of course we're on the bridge, so let me back it up. See if we can even tell. I think that's just making it louder. It helps with those punchy parts. Okay, well, maybe de-essing the cymbals, yeah. I think in that case, I wouldn't use a Selig style de-esser, which is different. I would use a dynamic EQ or some other dynamic compression. Well, that's not right. Sidechain filter compression. So I would boost the obnoxious frequency going into the sidechain channel of the compressor so that it would compress more at those frequencies. So I think I started a little late, but we're right at an hour right now. I think unless there are any more questions, we will call it a day. And I'm going to make an announcement now that I'm going to try to do these on the second Thursday of every month, once a month for this next year, and see if I can make it all the way through. It's not that much work to do this, but usually what I'm scrambling for is to get everything together and to try to think of interesting subjects. So I will post into Reason Talk a thread for next month, about a week out, hopefully this time. And oh, somebody's asking about the vocal reverb. Yes, I will solo the vocal while I'm talking. And we'll do
Once I knew you loved me, but now that faith is not around. And if you love me, let me know. I am so close to.
So on the vocal here, I had to listen for a second to remember what I'm doing. There's a little slap echo right there. So on I, it's got some effects.
I think that's why today you're not around.
So the reverb is just the RV7000 big. This is my go-to long reverb, by the way. Hall algorithm, size all the way up or close to it. Diffusion all the way up. Room size 4. I don't know what it is about room size 4 that I like. And I usually increase the modulation up a good bit, and then it's usually decaying over 100, which I don't know what that actually means, and then some high frequency damp to keep it dark. The idea is the reverb's going to run long and kind of be underneath everything but not be loud. So if it was louder, it would be a little bit intense to have it be this long. So let's go. The main thing that you hear there is a little bit of a slap reverb, the Elvis type of slap back. And then the long delays when they kick in, of course, that's pretty obvious that you hear those as an independent sound almost. Let's hear just that much in the context of the mix, out of curiosity. So you can hear how long it's still going, although the noise is being obnoxious. Does that player 042, does that answer your question? Hopefully it does. If there's no more questions, I'm going to sign off for this week, this month, and be back again. Let me just give a little more insight onto what I'm trying to do here, because I want to get a little more interaction from anybody that's showing up and joining in to the party here. What I remember best about my early years in engineering was getting together with friends at studios on the weekends or the off time and just sharing ideas and just talking about how did you deal with this? What are you using for this? And checking out other studios, or if it's just the studio staff, maybe we're just going to go through all the microphones and make a kind of notes on what shape they're in and what we like about them, and or talk about, let's try all the acoustic guitar mics we have. I remember doing that one day. Let's just see what of all the mics we have. Let's go through the usual suspects and add a few more in there and see what we think about each one. It's a great way to learn, but the best part is hearing another person's opinion, because you think, oh, this mic is awesome, and then they will say, oh, I don't like that, I like this one instead. And if they can offer you a reason why, then it's fun to listen from that perspective. I've had my mind changed by somebody saying, oh, I like the bottom end and I'm listening to the top end. So I listen to the bottom end and realize, oh, that mic is really better because of the bottom end. I was focused on the top end. So getting a different perspective is very, very handy. And as much as it can be done online in this context, I would like to have that same kind of environment where if this was real life, you would all be sitting here at the studio and we'd just be hanging out and you'd be asking questions and I'd be giving you more hands-on answers and then letting you try things. Or like, let's try some different mics on the drums, or how are you dealing with the hardware sense integration into the setup, which is another thing we can talk about. But it's just a place to share ideas and to try things out. So if anybody has things that they've always wanted to do, or if anybody wants to send me a track that they're having trouble mixing and get some feedback, I want to keep it pretty open format and not always be me making a song or me showing you a mix of mine, but just ways to interact and have some fun and share ideas and maybe get a different perspective. And so on that note, let me make sure nobody's screaming at me for something. King Alpha, welcome to the party, even though you're late. I guess, how come there was no side chain on the drums and bass? I'm not a side chain guy. I love the effect, the pumping effect of side chain, but I've never gotten it to do anything better for me than what I can do the way I've always done it. And I keep trying it, so I'm always open to it, and that's one of those things that, change my mind. Somebody show me a way for it to work. I can't get it to do anything really. It doesn't make space for things. I've got other ways of making space. I think that if you have a problem, if you have a conflict, then you need a way to solve it. But my approach is to not create the conflict, and therefore I don't have to solve it. So it's a different approach. It takes practice, and I've had many years, obviously, to do it. So it's not for everyone. And that's the thing is one of the things I learned by being in the studio so much was that I could watch another engineer come in and use the same gear in the studio and get a totally different sound with the same equipment that I was using or that the previous guy was using. And I've also watched engineers come in and take two different approaches and end up at the same place. Like maybe one of them started with a dark guitar and they used a bright mic, and the other started with a bright guitar and they used a dark mic, but the guitar sound they got in the end was pretty similar. So that taught me early on that you can have the same gear getting different sounds and different gear getting the same sounds, and it's really down to what you're doing with it and how you're reacting to the source. So whatever you start with is going to direct where you're going to go with the microphone choice or the EQ choice or whatever. And if you start with the wrong thing, you're going to spend some time fixing it and making it work. That's the same thing for frequency clashes and carving out space for things. I prefer to not build a track that has those clashes in it. So it's an arrangement thing. I don't create the clashes, so then I don't have to EQ all over the place to dig them out. I do have a EQ philosophy we can go into next time, and it will hopefully make sense. It makes sense to me. That's the thing is, I will share something and maybe 1 in 10 of you will say, I can use that, and the rest will say, yeah, not for me. But it's for that 1 in 10 guy. And it's also the overview of seeing different people do different ways and them all being valid, even if you don't choose it for yourself. So we're all just trying to learn. We're all trying to look at the options out there and find the ones that work for us. And so they're really, that in that sense, there aren't any rules except for the rules that get you to your stated goal. And only you know what that goal is. So you can't fail unless, I can't tell you if you've succeeded or failed at your goal because you're defining your goal. That's my philosophy. And I'm going to leave it at that. Turn up some ambience there in the background to go out on, and look for me again the second Thursday of the month of March, whatever day that is. We'll figure it out, and I'll be there, and I hope to see you there too. Until next time. And sorry about the noise.